see your comments in this one or no?
We're live.
I see comments in this one. Oh, you can see the comments.
There you go. Hey,
Can we see the comments?
Can you lock in? It's the
I'm
Rose Bowl.
locked in. I'm ready. Let's go.
You're worried about the comments. It's the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, we want people commenting.
This is the granddaddy of them all.
I ask people to bother you.
This is Mind Your Banners.
I want them to be able to bother you. I don't want to.
This is the Mind Your Banners of them all.
The granddaddy of them all.
The
Is this our last podcast of the?
Possibly. I was going to try and find somebody from Tuscaloosa to do a sit down. I know everybody's busy.
But that doesn't involve me. So is this our last podcast of the year?
You mean the calendar year?
Calendar year.
Yeah. Probably. Okay. Possibly.
Happy New Year, everybody.
We might find time. I mean, I've been promising some Rose Bowl diaries.
You're going to say something else there.
Which I'll probably do something like around open practice tomorrow, and then maybe something.
Again, that's your business.
But you can jump in the Rose Bowl diaries if you would like to. Somebody said evening all, like it's not.
It's
evening.
weird, yeah. No, it's like
it's not evening at all.
Beautiful out, sun's out.
Yeah. Sun's out, guns out.
I feel like I'm in the dark here.
This is a great. Like we're just to be clear, we're in like a basement conference room in the media hotel. This is Indiana. This is the beginning of the championship DVD here.
With commentary, that'd be fun to do commentary for it. Like they had a commentary, DVD commentary.
Yeah.
A dated reference, but like, yeah, we could do one of those.
Very dated.
Like Statler and Waldorf, that'd be fun.
Like Mystery Science Theater 3000. All right. This is Mind Your Banners, a minute and 28 seconds later. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This probably won't be the last thing of some stripe we put together in a multimedia capacity before the Rose Bowl, but this will probably be our main sort of Rose Bowl preview. We both made it out to LA today. You flew direct from Chicago. I experienced the wonder that is Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, Arizona. But we're here. And I mean, as you said, the weather is great. If they were going to play the game today, I think everyone would be a lot more excited. Yeah. Right now, the Rose Bowl sunset looks like it may not be so visible.
We'll see. A lot of time between now and then.
There is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I mean, we have not talked. We've not actually podcasted in a little while here. We've both been building up to this for a while. Just what are your thoughts as you exit the airplane, as you take the 25-minute hike to the LA exit?
You watch us at 1.5 speed. That's impressive. I don't know if I could do that. Wow, I did not pick up Zach, and he didn't give me a ride either. It was really disappointing. I had to get to the airport by myself. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Appreciate you guys bothering Zach. It makes this fun. My thoughts. I don't know. Indiana, what, 6.6, still 6.5 touchdown favorites?
Yeah, it's right. Everything I've seen has just been a touchdown favorite. I don't remember if it's 6.5, 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, I think that feels right. I think that Indiana, is in a good spot here. I think you have to feel good about the matchup, how they match up against this Alabama team. Obviously, Stephen Daly was kind of the main injury story coming out of the Big Ten title game, but they're healthy otherwise. I just think it's a culmination of kind of this season, what they put together, and I think they have to be feeling good about where they're at as a team. Obviously, a lot of talk has been about them sort of refocusing with after the layoff, after kind of the Heisman of it all, and obviously winning the Big Ten title. But I just don't think that this team. I'd be surprised if that was an issue. Like, this team hasn't run into sort of any of those kind of. We talked about trap game. We talked about overlooking opponents. We talked about, just whatever kind of things have been thrown out their way. They've never had those sort of issues. So I'd be surprised if those kind of came up now. You were at practice the other day. We'll get another shot tomorrow.
That was like, just to touch on that, I have mentioned, you've mentioned, but I mean, I grew up in like the Saban South, like right there at kind of the end of my childhood was the beginning of the Nick Saban era. Like, whenever I have made the comment that of sort of Curt Cignetti reminded me of Nick Saban, that the most fundamental comparison has been that his teams don't have those letdown moments. Sure. And, Saban was famous for, having to scream into a camera the week they were going to play the Citadel to try and get his team focused. And listen, Saban obviously also had some natural talent advantages that I don't think anybody really has anymore in those, in those old days.
Cignetti has done that behind the scenes that we find out after the fact.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, we might know.
But the point is, like, that has always been the thing that, to me, with Curt, that has been Curt Cignetti's superpower. And that is the reason that I would that when I do make Saban comparisons, and I'm shy about making them because nobody should be compared to arguably the best coach in the history of college football. But when I do make the comparison, that is generally why I'm making it, is because Saban's teams had that quality where if you could beat them, if you had a better plan, if you had, better players, which is pretty rare, or if you had like a Johnny Manziel or something like that,
individual effort,
some game change kind of talent, sure, you could beat them, but like there weren't down days, there weren't bad days. I think and I don't think Indiana will have one of those in the Rose Bowl. I think Hoosier Viking points out, and I'm almost certain he's right, Indiana hasn't lost a game they were favored to win since Kurt Cignetti arrived.
And what's funny is that they haven't been the dogs very many times either.
No.
So now, since midway through his first season.
The only question I have about the layoff is more the physical side of it. And this is obviously a cross-sport comparison, but I remember listening to a podcast the first year that they had the bye in the baseball playoffs. And it was a Braves-centric podcast. The Braves got a bye that year. And they had a former player on, I think it was Eric O'Flaherty, the reliever, who said the reason he'd be shy about the bye week was because at the end of the year, everyone's hurt. Even guys who aren't hurt, just hold on. Even guys who aren't hurt are hurt somehow. And the thing that he said keeps you going is just the routine. Is like I come in, I do this today, I do this tomorrow, I do this the next day. Like I basically turn off the part of my brain that says like your body is broken, go fix it. And when you stop, your body thinks, okay, then we're done. And your body starts to shut down, and it's hard to kind of rev it back up again. And I think that's the only, I don't think Indiana's going to have any, you want to talk about Saban-esque, the extent to which Indiana was falling all over itself. The Prairies, Alabama, they're still Bama. Look at all the talent. Look at all the draft picks. Look, like there was absolutely no, what is the favored phrase? There was no rat poison coming out of Indiana when we talked to him over the weekend in Bloomington.
Let's talk about what you said, because
it's just the physical side.
I think it's important. I think you're ignoring sort of a big deal, is that this team does not practice like every other team. This team is not.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they were beat up because they played. That was a unique situation where they played, what was it, 7 in a row or
6 in a row?
6 in a row.
What?
Yeah, but they did get beat up then, and then they needed to buy, and they got it. But like everybody I've talked to in terms of like current and former players talk about the practice schedule, that they are uniquely at the end of the year more, I don't know, what physically prepared for the grind of the late season games than other teams, because they do not, the coaching staff specifically, Cignetti obviously has laid out this plan, does not push them in a way of practice where they have to sort of be, just run down by the end of the season. And so your point maybe about revving it back up is fair, but I'm saying, but like, I think the part you have to take away is like, this is not a team that got run down to the point or gets run down to the point physically because their practices are so, 2 hours a day and they're going at, like, it's just different. And so I think that's maybe an exception to some of those rules that we've seen, or teams getting run down or teams getting tired, just having a hard time kind of bouncing back. Because this team physically at the end of the year, you've heard people, all the transfers that come in that say that did it the other way, have all been like, Roman Hemby. I was like, wow, like this is a difference. You feel different at the end of the season than you do on those other teams.
No, and like I and people are pointing out in the comments too, there are advantages to this. That they probably needed a little bit more time off, especially after the Big Ten championship game. That was a very physical game. People are pointing out, you mentioned, like, you have to come up with a new plan with Daly out, whether that's just Daniel and Dukeway next man up, whether it's changing some of what you're doing schematically, moving some different pieces around in different places. It undeniably, there are advantages to the layoff too. And it's not really even necessarily the idea of, well, they're healthier than it's more just that, like, that I think the point that I was trying to make through the example from the baseball podcast was the idea that it seems like what keeps athletes going in all sports is just that routine. And then when you interrupt it's a question.
But I think that you have players that are going to stick to it. Yes, the practice routine might not be the same, but like, I don't think Fernando Mendoza stopped doing a lot of the things he does.
No, probably not.
And I think you have a group.
But it is the challenge of a coach to make sure that when the routine is interrupted, that the culture within the program, within the locker room says, but we stay who we are. We stay what we're doing.
Heard that at the point
again and again and again.
You hear Aiden Fisher even talk about that basically same concept. Like, what was his routine? How did he change it to get better? And he's kind of stuck to it. Just about. I think you've seen players, and especially since he's got all these JV guys still on the team, this is a locker room that does not get out of it, right? Like, they are one track sort of mind sort of play. It's funny, one interaction, I don't think I include this in the story. As the players at the Heisman ceremony, after the Heisman ceremony, kind of, that scene where all the players were in the room and Cignetti was about to get to the podium. He's like, all right, guys, this is enough. Get it all out now. We'll be back Tuesday. And they're like, why Tuesday? Let's go Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this team is. So, like, I just, to me, like,
and I guess like this is, to me, more so than like even playing in like a national championship game. This to me is the ultimate test of that.
Yeah.
If you can get through a month layoff after,
because then the schedule becomes more like just an extended,
right. Like, but if you can get through a month layoff after an incredibly emotional win, and then the Heisman Trophy and all the All-America nods, the Coach of the Year nods, the All-Conference stuff, like there's never going to be a more distracting moment in a season than what Indiana's gone through.
But I think this year it might have been tougher to turn around and play that first round game with all the Heismans.
Maybe.
That they did get a little.
I mean, it depends on who they're playing, right?
Yes,
like, I mean,
it might have been an easier. But but in that scenario, they maybe are low sleep. I'm just saying.
Do you think
turnaround after that would have been, I think, more of a challenge?
Are you with me in that?
I'm here. Yes.
Well, are you with me in that long term? Everyone needs a home playoff game, and assuming we get this like 16, for example.
No, no.
You really don't think?
I don't. I think neutral field is the best way to decide it. I think that I'd take the home crowd out. I'd rather see.
Not even the first round. Not even like a 16
I'm absolutely the opposite. All right.
Well, the $25 million economic impact on Bloomington, I'm going to leave that to you.
That's fine. Take it away. I just think.
Wow.
I'd rather see.
Burn it down.
I'd rather see the teams on more even ground. I'd rather see the best. I think that brings out the best in both teams. You're getting the best. It's not, the crowd's not impacting it. You don't have a home field advantage.
For the record, that is going to be the most controversial take either of us has on this. I don't
think that's. You think that's controversial?
I think it's incredibly controversial.
Yeah, no.
I also think Scott Dolson would look at you and say that he would gladly take another $10 million in game day revenues.
Or would you rather skip those and be in the quarterfinals every year? I think that would you rather be in the quarterfinals.
Well, but I'm talking about a world where we go to 16 teams.
No, yeah, I just think that I don't. I just think you'd rather, from the game quality itself, you would get less sort of lopsided results. So I don't agree with you. I just don't.
You don't agree with the majority.
And I think it's fun, like when you feel like somebody just talked about the game at Lucas Oil, like that environment. Like you didn't think that was a fun environment for a football game? No, because it was a neutral site. I mean,
but we get the best of both worlds.
No, I don't think you need the best of both.
I mean, because I think we can all assume 16 teams is coming, right? Like 16 is like when they were like
comment of the year.
When they were like December 1 is the deadline, and then they were like, actually the deadline is 3 days after the national championship.
Why do you have to have deadlines if you can make it whatever? Like make a decision. I don't know. That's a different discussion.
Yeah, it is.
But no, I think neutral site's fun. I think this will be. I mean, I'm expecting like a huge.
But why not both? Why not both?
Want the best games?
Well, 16 teams, top 8 seeds.
We get enough home games during the year. You don't need another home game.
I mean, again, I think the athletics directors who are trying to backfill $20 million in revenue sharing would disagree.
But I mean, I'm not looking at it from that perspective, so I don't have to worry about that.
I think the local business owners that would love to have a weekend of just hyperactivity at an incredibly quiet time.
I guess like you're speaking like as if like Indiana is now there. I mean, it sort of says to the point how far Indiana has gone that you're now just assuming they're in the first round every year.
Well, you're sending them off to the Hawaii Bowl.
I'm excited to the quarterfinals. Let's just go to the neutral sites.
Music City Bowl quarterfinal.
God.
Let's talk about Alabama. Listen, Indiana probably overdid it. This is still a very talented team. It is a team that at one point, the Florida State loss notwithstanding, for the first couple months of the season, looked like it might have an argument for being as good as any team in the country. It has one of the 2 or 3 best wins of the season at Georgia. It was undeniably not a team that was playing very well. But at the end of the year, there were some health issues. They've never really been able to run the ball the way that, like, traditionally we would think about Alabama, or even like some of Kalen DeBoer's Washington teams running the ball, and I know injuries didn't really help with that. But like this is, and I know that some of this is just armchair analysis, but there was this initial wave of after the Oklahoma game, Indiana should win this game comfortably. I think Alabama is going, and I will state my controversial opinion in a bit, probably, but I think Alabama is going to give Indiana a stern challenge. I think Alabama can win this game. I think Alabama.
That was not your controversial.
I think Alabama. I think Alabama
for the camera.
If the weather is good on Thursday, I think Alabama will win this game.
There you go. Have at 'em. I don't.
And that's fair, and I might be wrong.
Look, I mean, if Indiana plays like they did against Ohio State, I don't see a scenario where they lose this game. Like I don't know, because even if the offense struggles, like you have to score more than 10 points. Like it's just this defense, and I said this earlier today. You're not taking away anything from Fernando Mendoza's Heisman season, and I know the Heisman's not a collective award, but like the defense is the story, and like I don't know. I mean, I guess you think Ty Simpson's going to take over because nobody's going to run. They're not going to suddenly run the ball.
No, not
take over. And so, like, what scenario is that they're going to be able to take advantage of Indiana's defense? Like, yeah, I mean, Daly's out.
That's part of it.
I just don't know that it's about an individual.
No, but at a certain point, like you subtract enough talented individuals, you start to feel an impact. My bigger argument, and I've made this a couple of different places. I'm not. Like this is not something I just decided to say on the plane today. My bigger argument is that consistently this season, when I've talked to people, when I've done like opposing radio or we've done our scouting podcasts and things, I've said that the numbers I look at are like, how well do you run the football? How well do you what are your opponent tackle for loss numbers, havoc numbers, and how well do you protect your quarterback? Because those are the things that Indiana does to discombobulate an opponent. They're really good in the secondary, don't get me wrong, but it all starts with, and I love that bit from Brian Haynes' brother where he said that the problem with Bryant's defense is that you don't know where anybody's going to be.
Yeah, how do you block somebody that you don't know where they're going to be? Yeah, and then it broke it down in sort of an elegant way.
Yeah, and I think Indiana's going to have success with a lot of that against Alabama. I watched that Oklahoma game, and not for the first time this season. I watched Alabama not run the football, not protect Ty Simpson, and still win the game. And they scored 34 points on the road in Norman, and Oklahoma was the author of some of its own downfall. No question that the drop punt and John Mateer just kind of collapsing in on himself in the second half. But I watched Alabama struggle with the things that Indiana would look at and say, let's take this away from them and see if they can beat us. And Alabama still scored 34 points on the road. And I think 27 or 24 of those were offensive points, or well, you can't score a field goal on offense, but I think there was a field goal. Yeah, but I think the field goal, there was a field goal that was
the block punt set up the field goal.
And then they had a defensive touchdown too.
So it was basically 10 points on the board because of other, obviously not the offense.
Yeah. Now,
to your point,
here's why I said good weather. Because if it is what it right now looks like it's going to be, which is anywhere from like half an inch to an inch and a half of rain, which obviously in LA, like an inch of rain in Indiana is one thing, an inch of rain in LA is something completely different. If it's that kind of game and it just comes down to like, can you run the ball? And it doesn't matter if because like Ty Simpson's whole thing is I can take pressure, I can break, contain, I can extend plays and throw on the run. Yeah. Can't throw on the run in the rain. You can't throw on the run in that kind of rain. When you can't keep your feet underneath you, when you can't keep a solid grip on the ball, you're really going to struggle to throw on the run. That is a game where it's like if you tell me right now it's pouring rain on Thursday afternoon for 3 of 4 quarters, 4 of 4 quarters, I think Indiana wins by 2 touchdowns. Because I just think Indiana, again, if you want to talk about the sort of Saban Cignetti stuff, one of the things that this team does schematically or strategically that reminds me of some of those Nick Saban teams is they will just lean on you forever. And we've talked how many times have we talked this season about, they ran for a big number, but it wasn't because they were popping off 30 and 40 and 50.
Third quarter.
It is just like they lean on you and lean on you. And then Fernando Mendoza makes a couple throws and suddenly you're down 10 points and you're chasing the game and they lean on you some more. And then in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, you're getting gashed.
So do you think it's a shootout then? Then do you think okay, so let's say
like a 28-24.
But so you think Bama's defense is going to do how do they slow down do they slow down Mendoza and it's just one dimensional? That's what it is. Like what's your how does this game unfold? I mean, obviously said with the rain, but I'm just curious. Like, how does this game get to the point where okay, Ty Simpson does enough to score some points? They also are limited offensively there as well.
Well, and I like real quickly, I will acknowledge this. Like, I will acknowledge that like there's every chance I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot. Duncan does make the point. Oklahoma's defense, as good as it was statistically, if you look at like their numbers against better offenses, like
they were slightly worse, but
like
that was a coaching sort of malpractice.
Yeah,
sort of scenario, and so like. Yes, I'm not discounting what Alabama did.
But I think Duncan's point is like Indiana's defense has been what it's been against everyone all year long. If you go look at what Oklahoma's defense was against Tennessee, against obviously
they didn't pad their numbers the first 3 weeks of the season and then do what they did.
If anything, Alabama was worse offensively against Oklahoma the second time around, and they scored more points and they won the game. So like, and again, like Ole Miss went into Norman and just kind of pushed Oklahoma around a little bit. I don't think R. Mason Thomas.
So don't get off track here. But what's the offense? Like, what happens? So like, does Mendoza struggle then as well? Like, I mean, so you're just imagining like, is it worst case scenario?
I think it's more that I think Ty Simpson plays well. That I think that in that situation, Ty Simpson.
But you still have to do enough to. I mean, outside of Ohio State, like what team has sort of slowed Indiana down to that point?
Yeah, I mean, Iowa has.
But that was an environment. Talk about first round playoff game at an environment like. Kinnick, I felt like had a lot to do with that.
Probably, and that's also just what Iowa is. I get that too. But imagine a world where Iowa does that, and I know this isn't perfectly clean, but Alabama is healthier on defense than they've been in a little while. Imagine a world where Alabama does something approximating what Iowa did, but with Alabama's offense. Because the problem with Iowa that day was that they couldn't answer anything that Indiana was. They could not take advantage of anything Indiana was giving them. They had like 2 big plays, and that was it. Like I said, I mean, there's every chance I'm wrong. I look at this matchup and I just think like it has nothing to do with mentality. It has nothing to do with they're distracted or whatever. I just think I just don't think Alabama is going to be thrown off by the things that Indiana is going to do that normally throw opponents off. Now maybe Indiana is
right, but I mean it's still at the end of the day. But yeah, that's my point. Like it's like at the end of the day, what does that matter if you're still a better team, right? And look, could Alabama have gone into Lucas Oil Stadium and beat Ohio State? I just don't.
On that day, absolutely not.
So my point is like, look, and I've seen him take the challenge of, and I think, like Oregon, maybe as talented. I think Ohio State might be slightly more talented or have slightly more depth. But like they've done this against I don't know. I just have a hard time envisioning sort of like in that scenario. I feel like things have to go wrong on both sides of the ball, and we just don't have a lot of evidence of that sort of happening. Because like even though the offense kind of got tripped up against Ohio State, like that defensive effort was like, Brian Haynes's masterful performance the last 2 years, and so it's hard to imagine that happens kind of on both sides of the ball, especially with this prep time. This is a coaching staff that does a real good job, kind of especially with extra time to kind of come up with a game plan. They make adjustments really well. Like I felt like a lot of what Alabama was able to kind of accomplish against Oklahoma was like dictated by the game itself and what happened in that game specifically, and maybe not more about Ty Simpson or talent. That like a timeout here or not punting in that one situation.
I do think Alabama needed that game though. After the Georgia game, I think that game will have done something. Maybe not enough, but then that goes to your point, like that it is mentality or momentum, and like
on
Alabama's side, sure,
maybe, but like I just don't know. I have a hard time seeing it going that, and maybe you lay an egg. It'd be a tough time to lay an egg, but like that's kind of what you're kind of talking about.
I'm not saying laying an egg. It won't be. I'm not envisioning something like the Notre Dame game last year where we're just like, oh wow, it turned out.
No, but I think for them to lose against a team they're favored by a touchdown, they've played better than all season really, except for the first 5 weeks. I mean, that's even debatable. Like, I don't know, you got the better quarterback, you got the better defense. Like,
yeah.
I mean, a lot has to go wrong, right?
I think I don't know that a lot has to go wrong because I think Alabama still has a natural talent level.
And when you looked at what has tripped teams up recently, it's been special teams. That hasn't been the case. Indiana's been special teams have been like sort of perfect. So like maybe like that happens, and that's something like that. Like we saw in the Ohio State last year, where you have like 2 disastrous plays that sort of changes the complexion of the game. Like that, I can get on board with that, like maybe just like an outlier type of thing happening, and then they lose. I just have a hard time envisioning both sides of the ball struggling to the point where they would lose.
I think the other thing I would throw out there is, I mean, like if you're looking for sort of matchups in this game, I would put the defensive coordinator, like we've talked a lot about Brian Haynes, and justifiably so. And I think he's had a better year than Kane Womack, but Kane Womack's still a really good defensive coordinator, and he does a lot of creative stuff. I mean, he's like it, it's not, his defenses weren't at Indiana. Obviously, it was a different staff, different roster, whatever. His defenses weren't as dominant as Brian Haynes' defenses, but they were disruptive in the same way, where they would bring exotic pressures, they would disguise their coverages really well. They would flip man and zone on you. They could, and that was at Indiana in a pre-portal era, and that was a good roster, but it wasn't necessarily like where you're going to be able to like pick and choose at an athletic level that Alabama already can, right. Plus the portal. There was just if Kane Womack has a good day, I think Fernando Mendoza can struggle. And I don't think necessarily like he's awful. I just think maybe we see more of that mortal.
Well,
Fernando
and that goes
Mendoza.
back to what I think is the key to kind of tripping Indiana up. And people have sort of asked, and maybe we could kind of talk, this is a good time to talk about it. The offensive line and getting pressure, because if you get pressure on Fernando Mendoza, this is obviously later in the year now, so maybe it doesn't happen. But there have been times, because I don't think he really did this against Ohio State. And I mean, he took the hardest hit of the year that he took in that first minute, the first really second of the game, that he kind of gets thrown off and reverts back to some of his bad habits. I didn't think that happened as much against Ohio State. It's more just Ohio State being a good defense and taking away stuff. It wasn't Mendoza making mistakes or making those kind of mistakes like he did earlier in the season. But the offensive line, to people's points, like what does it look like? It was a very big outlier in terms of them making changes within a game in that against Ohio State. Switching out Lynch after he made a mistake. Did he give the sack or was it the holding? And then Benson getting taken out, or Benson getting put in for
Zinmahalski.
Yeah. So both of them made a mistake, and then they came out. And obviously, some health has dictated some of those things, some of those decisions. It looks like it's safe to say, Drew Evans is sort of back in the fold. Obviously, made it through the Ohio State game, no problems. What does that right side look like? Do they go back to Lynch? Johnny's sort of in the mix. Obviously, they have Zen and Benson. And Shanahan talked about it as being sort of a plus that they've got now all these guys that they can mix and match and get the best matchups. But is it an effective group? Do they keep Alabama at bay? And what does that ultimately look like? I think it'll be very interesting.
That's where I want to know how well Indiana runs the ball. I mean, rain or shine, because Alabama is a little bit healthier along that defensive line than I think it's been, kind of in the last few weeks. And if Indiana can. Because, I mean, that was like, Oregon, I think, was kind of the ultimate example for Indiana, where they didn't run the ball prolifically in that game, but they when they needed it, they got it. And like, if you look at those, like the thing I came back to anytime we talked about that game was Indiana had the three really long touchdown drives, and none of them were fluky. They were all very methodical. Yeah. And to his credit, Fernando Mendoza was good in all three, particularly the game winner. But like, if you look in the box score, there's a 6-yard run, there's an 8-yard run, there's a 12-yard run. There's just enough to keep a defense on its heels and not just sort of pinning its ears back. Because like, that was what they couldn't do against Iowa. I mean, Iowa. I don't think it is unfair to say. Like, I would say Iowa came closer to beating Indiana than Ohio State did, because Ohio State, even with those two drives in the fourth quarter, Ohio State did not score in the last 40 minutes of that game. Iowa had Indiana trailing in the fourth quarter.
I was talking about that someone today. I was like, that was probably actually the biggest threat to the season.
Yes,
and anything else.
100%. And I think
if the quarterback was
Gronowski, Mark
doesn't
Gronowski,
go out of that game,
then maybe
that's a different.
Maybe I think they probably still win, but it's certainly.
But, I mean, Hank Bronco.
You didn't get to that last Iowa drive thinking they have no shot to move the ball here. But my point is, when Indiana struggled at Iowa, it was because Indiana could not do anything to be multidimensional offensively.
And the only scramble was the one on the sideline at the end, right? Like, Mendoza didn't hit sort of some of those big runs.
And he's found that as the years gone on, obviously.
Yeah.
But it to me, that is the big, like the big, like, no matter what the weather, no matter what anything else, I want to know, even before you tell me how they pass pro, or does a Johnny start, or does he start a tackle or guard, or who's doing what? is how well do they run the ball? Because if Indiana, like I said, I'm always so hesitant with this Cignetti Saban stuff. And I think the thing is, I think Cignetti kind of blanches at some of that. And I don't think it's because he doesn't like Nick Saban. I saw this with Tom Crean when he was at Indiana too. I think there's just this feeling of like, I don't want. Yes. Like I don't want people to think that I own, like I pin, yes, right. I pin all of my success to one coach. Like Crean always wanted to bring up Ralph Willard. Cignetti always wants to bring up like his dad and Bobby Bowden.
I think he learned specific. Like he learned a very specific
and,
thing from Nick Saban. Like, it's the program building part of it.
But
but it's not the whole.
But the way this team wins games is very, very like Saban-esque, especially like like Lane Kiffin Saban, when Saban finally just sort of embraced like the madness of let's throw the ball over the place, let's go get athletes that are better than anybody else, and I'm going to have Lane Kiffin, and I'm going to have Steve Sarkisian, and we're going to do all this crazy stuff offensively, and I'm just going to kind of let go. But if you think about like, John Parker Wilson, Alabama, AJ McCarron, Alabama, those teams would just, they would just grind you down. Like they would grind you into powder as a game went on. And if Indiana does that to Alabama, if Indiana puts up a couple of drives early, even if like maybe one's a touchdown, one's a field goal, or one's a touchdown, one ends in like a fourth down that doesn't convert or something, but Indiana puts a couple of those like 9-10 play drives into Alabama early where they're getting to third and short and they're converting a lot, that's when I start to say, like, I don't know if Alabama can hold on to this for 4 quarters, because this team, they're tough. Yes, that's undeniably true, but they're so precise that you can't, if they start playing like that, you can't catch them in mistakes. And then at that point, you are hanging on.
Yeah.
And we've talked about how few snaps their defense plays. Well, that's because their offense can extend those drives.
Well, that's your point. We're coming back to, what you said kind of about, obviously, the scenario where Alabama wins. Like, I just feel like they'd have to make mistakes they haven't made recently, where the Illinois, the long pass play, or some of those moments where they just haven't had a lot of those, where they've had, like you say, they when you play mistake-free football like they have sort of recently, especially, or like they did it in the Big Ten title game, like, it's very hard.
Did you clock the assistant coaching story, by the way, that Brian Haynes told yesterday?
Yeah.
Do we think that bathroom was on the first floor or the second floor? Because like if it was the second floor, like that would be that. I mean, if it's the first floor, it just goes into like the foundation, right? But the second floor, that'd be kind of scary. Like, did they all walk back in one day and they were just like, "Why is the bathtub?"
But like those things happen in those old college houses. Like,
trust me, I've lived in some of those old college houses. We rented a house down the street from some GAs. Bryant might have been living in like the one bedroom that like 3 of them shared, and our house had a hole in the floor, and I could see down into the basement where I used to have to go. It was so old that they had those screw-in fuses, and when we'd blow one, I'd have to go around, open the cellar door, and go down into the basement. Yeah, that was more than once. I was like,
we could talk more maybe because we did get the coordinators for the first time all year.
Duncan says his place on 8th Street. Mine was at Dunn and 8th. Maybe we lived in the same sad floor.
In terms of what else stood out from what they said, I had 2 things. One, and I mean, I think it's become kind of increasingly obvious, but in terms of Brian Haynes talked about a switch that he made. Basically he was very rigid, especially last year, about the using 4-3 when against certain personnel packages with tight ends on the field. And now he said, basically, because of the emergence of Isaiah Jones and the confidence he has in him, basically we can run 4-3 against anybody, anything, any look. And that sort of was interesting to me, because I think it speaks back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of like you being concerned about Daly being out. Like, having those 3 linebackers on the field has sort of opened up a lot more pressure possibilities to sort of replace the pressure Daly got. And so I think that was interesting. It stood out to me. And then the other thing is mostly Haynes talked about this, but he was talking about two ways. Like, earlier in the career, he was talking about why maybe he doesn't call many all-out blitzes. And he's like, well, when you're a naive, it's easier to call an all-out blitz because you don't know the consequences. But he also talked about in terms of like what they learned from like the Notre Dame game and some of the tougher games last year, the game plans they had, how they called the game. And Brian Haynes, even at the time, kind of the Notre Dame game, was like, I didn't do very good today. But like the lessons they learned in that, like, we got to be us. We got to be ourselves. And so I think if you're playing Alabama last year, like some of the things that you were talking about would concern me more. But like this team, in terms of like the coaching staff, learned very valuable lessons last year in terms of like how not to approach it, and what they got to do. And so those are two things that stood out. I saw people in the comments talking about kind of the coordinators. Anything for you that from what Shanahan specifically and Haynes talked about yesterday stood out?
I don't think anything specific. I mean, like I asked Kurt Cignetti, I wasn't the only one, and we kind of danced around it with Haynes. No one's going to tell us what they're going to do. Kurt Cignetti.
He didn't talk.
No, earlier. I asked him a few days ago. They're not going to say it, right? They're not going to say like this is the plan. Is it just going to be Daniel and Dukwe?
Well, I think it's going to be Daniel and Dukwe,
but I think it
changes around,
right? Like Stephen Daly, I believe, played every snap of the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Is it Daniel and Dukwe 80% of the time? Is it Daniel and Dukwe 90% of the time? Is it Daniel and Dukwe 60% of the time, and 40% of the time they throw Alabama something that they haven't really run much this year?
40% and like 3-3-5, like that'd be wild.
Well, but they've had. They
have used it, but no.
And more than that, they've had a month. I mean, and they've known the entire time that. Like, if we are assuming Daly's out, I think he's, no one has flatly said, like, he will not play. If we are assuming he's not playing, they've had a month to.
No, I thought he said at the start when he said the injury was season-ending.
He said it is likely. Okay. Like, he said it is likely he will not
return. Is the injury report today?
I believe it is. So go ahead and pull it up.
Here we go. Live on the thing. Is it Big Ten availability report still, or do they have them on a?
I honestly don't know.
You could do some more talking.
No, I mean, I think that's the big question I have. That, and I mean, to your point, more just the idea of, what lessons did Indiana learn from those two games it lost last year? Because we've both talked about that at times over the last 12 months, that there were moments when not just Brian Haynes, but we don't really talk too much Shanahan much. But I would
at 8:10 Eastern. What time is it now? So in an hour we'll have the first injury report.
Even I think at times Kurt Cignetti has probably tacitly admitted that Indiana didn't really stick to its guns. Whereas an Ohio State game, for example, Indiana very much stuck. Like Indiana was not blowing teams out. That was the fewest points they'd scored all year. I think it was the fewest points they've scored.
But the constant trying to go downfield.
Yes. The ultimate moment is the one where it's third down. We need a conversion. We are going to we're going to do what we do. We are looking for the single coverage back shoulder throw with our Heisman Trophy quarterback. We don't care that, the sheet maybe says run a slant or a draw or an RPO. No, that was there was nothing RPO about that. That was one step and throw. Fernando Mendoza identified the single coverage and he went for it. And that was, to me, Indiana. That was your point of Indiana saying we're going to be us. We're going to do what we do. We're going to live and die on our strengths and not, something that we feel is kind of put on top of us by an opponent. We're not going to let the other team dictate. I just think Duncan was 8th and Park, so not quite the same. Not quite the same place. Similar, same neighborhood. But no, I keep coming back to the idea that, in a way, and I wrote this for something that's going to go live in the morning. This is kind of it. You can say they can still win a national title. Yes, I get that. But there are, at best, a half dozen programs in America, probably fewer, that are allowed to start any given season saying, if we don't win a national title, it's a disappointment. Or if we aren't at least in the national title game, it's a disappointment. Yeah. Winning a national title is, to a certain extent, even when you're in the playoff, even when you're a quarterfinal, semifinal, is to a certain extent an abstract concept. And especially with this setup, to what you said earlier, if they win this game, then it's, 8 days to the Peach Bowl. And if they win that game, it's 10 days to the national. It gets back to feeling more like a season and less like what we would have maybe 20 years ago culturally recognized as a national title, where it's we get to the end of the year, we win our conference championship game, we are the number 1 or the number 2 team, and now everything builds up to this grand moment. This is the grand moment. And if Indiana rises to meet this, then there will be presumably other great moments in Kurt Cignetti's tenure, but this will kind of be it.
I think it's more framed because I think
I don't think he'll frame it that way. Don't get me
wrong.
No,
but I think you immediately top it if you win the next game. So I don't know that that's necessarily true.
See, I disagree. I disagree for a few reasons. Number one, it is the Rose Bowl, which I think is still culturally relevant to a Big Ten program that has been fighting to get to this stage for a long time. Number two, I think the last sort of like demon to exercise from these last 2 years is the Alabama,
it's the last
SEC,
streak you can't.
all that.
And it's the bowl game streak. It's the last sort of thing.
Yes,
Last thing there.
And number three, it is the last time that we are going to wonder, how do you handle this massive stage? Because the Peach Bowl won't feel that way.
Because, like I said, I mean, 1 versus 2 in the Big Ten title game was just ginormous. Like, and I thought that was as big of a stage as you could get because of.
And you had a lot of buildup.
And because the stakes of that game, like you were the number 1 seed. If you win this, like, and you beat Ohio State, you know, that losing streak. Like, I don't know that's and I think like in 2 weeks, if they would win. Or what is it, 3 weeks? If they were to win the national title, this becomes like sort of less of a victory.
Sure.
So like it's hard for me to say that.
But that's my point. Is like that's an abstract concept until you do it.
Yes, but I do agree that there's significance to this moment, and more so for Indiana than any other team probably in the field, really. But I just think that this team's so programmed to sort of ignore that. Like
probably.
I mean, it might be interesting. Like, could you like? Does anybody in that room, because we're going to get to talk to like 40-some players tomorrow, how many of them even know when Indiana won last ball game? How many of them know?
Maybe the better way to put it then is like, this is the last question that Indiana's got to answer. And in this sort of 2-year-long pursuit of respect for the idea that Indiana football is just something different now.
Right.
Like, this is the last, because again, like, yes, undeniably, a Peach Bowl win is more important than a Rose Bowl win because it's a semifinal, not a quarterfinal. But like, I am confident that if Indiana wins this game, we're going to get to Atlanta next week, and it's not going to feel quite like this because there won't have been so much buildup. Because it's going to feel a lot more like just the sort of like the week to week of, okay, now the biggest game really actually is just the next game because the next game is a week from now. I mean, it will be a bigger deal because we'll be in Atlanta, which is obviously the greatest city in America. Real quickly, Pettigrew asks the Independence Bowl. No, Indiana's last bowl win was the 1991 Copper Bowl.
Yes. And so
against J.J. Joe and Santana Dotson.
The idea of the length of it does make a difference in terms of like, but I mean, like, you got guys that are deleted their social media that just don't. It goes back to the idea that like this team is so focused on the moment that is more of a thing for the fans than the actual team itself.
That's fair.
And that's what I mean.
But at the end of the day, you're not going to escape that narrative like externally until you put it
correct.
To bed
but I just
all they've been doing is putting to bed narratives for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Last thing we should talk about, and my computer's running short.
Well, we've got an hour and 20 minutes. Today was it.
My computer has 32 minutes left, and actually that's a lie. Trust me, this thing goes faster than
2
you
minutes.
Think. Yeah. What if it rains? Because like Indiana these I think are both very different, especially Alabama in the rain. Because again, Alabama does not run the ball well. They really have not for most of the season. Certainly not since that initial Jam Miller injury. Ty Simpson's strength is extending plays, is throwing on the run. Now, that brings maybe some of the mobile Ty Simpson element into it, but like throwing on the run in the rain. Like if you think about, I think people think throwing a football like on the move is actually easy. It is not, because you're essentially trying to separate two different parts of your body. Like you're trying to control your upper body in one way and your lower body in a completely different way, but then you're trying to get them to sync up. If it's wet, then it becomes not impossible, but incredibly difficult. And that is where I feel like if you tell me right now, like I said, you know, if you want like a prediction from me, Alabama 27, Indiana 24. But if you tell me right now that it is pouring rain on at 1 o'clock on Thursday with no end in sight, then it's like Indiana 30, Alabama 14.
See, it's weird because like the rain, your point, like, I think Indiana has a built-in advantages schematically on offense, defense in the rain. But like in the rain, like you can get a game where
you can also just get a
freaky like game. The punts, right? Like that sort of comes up, and like two of those plays, like we've seen how that can just kill and change the complexion of a game. It hasn't happened this year. I haven't had to worry about kind of one of those moments where like you return a kickoff because guys slip in coverage, slip on the field. And so like that to me is sort of like a wild card that would make me maybe give me more pause to sort of say like I think Indiana's going to win by double digits, which is what I think, because of the idea of those sort of fluke plays happening. Like how long does it last? Is it a half? Is the whole game? Like you said, is it sort of like a downpour? They've handled weather when it's come. Because like the conditions were sort of wet and damp in Oregon. Obviously, the game last year in the snow against Purdue.
The game last year against Maryland. They played. I mean, they played a lot of that Illinois game in the rain. Remember it poured in that Illinois.
Yeah, and it was obviously very cold.
Remember the clouds coming over the press box? It looked like the Star Destroyer scene.
And rain against Michigan State. And the worst Mendoza's played in the elements was the cold, but that won't be an issue.
No,
right?
yeah.
Like, so I mean,
it will be cold for LA. It will be like 60 degrees.
Right, but I mean, like the difference was it was like negative. Felt like negative 10. So
it was very cold that night. Yes.
Yeah, so like that's not the element that they have to worry about. So
that night was like that scene in Hunt for Red October where Sean Connery says cold and hard.
Yeah, he's like he figured it out. Like he's like that's what Midwest cold is. So like I don't know, like that. I guess we just view the game completely opposite. Basically, it's like where I think I get the rain gives me more pause just because you could throw in, like I said, mistakes that you can't account for, guys slipping. Whereas I think with these teams on a neutral field, like we'll see, but I think Indiana's the better team.
I mean, it could be that I just really want to go to Atlanta, and I'm just not letting myself.
Well, you've been sort of, I mean, like you've basically, I mean, I don't want to say it's a half dozen, but maybe like 4 times this year, you're like Indiana's out, they're in trouble.
Like when it was 7-3 Indiana and West Lafayette, I texted you Indiana's in trouble.
No, not that time. We were together in West Lafayette, so we didn't have to text.
Because I was worried that we weren't sitting together.
Yes, that's true.
I definitely sent you that text message.
But does anybody? We got 2 minutes here before the laptop crashes. We appreciate everybody that's been here. We've got a growing number. So anybody, any comments, questions? We got a few minutes here.
Mike here says Simpson has better stats than Mendoza. Like I don't know if we're talking to some Alabama people too. Just one more time with feeling. Fernando Mendoza has not played in the fourth quarter basically at all this year.
If Cignetti wanted to get him to 4,000 yards, he could have easily gotten to 4,000 yards.
Alberto Mendoza has thrown more fourth quarter passes than Fernando Mendoza if you remove the games Indiana won in the fourth quarter, which is like 5 of 13. Like in the 8 games that Indiana won comfortably, Alberto Mendoza was more involved in the fourth quarter than Fernando Mendoza. Like the numbers, and I know that.
Frankly, I think in a couple of those games he could have gone out earlier.
We've had some playful conversations, I know, about Fernando Mendoza this season, but I think we both would vouch for the idea. If anybody, Alabama has not played tougher defenses either, Mike. I mean, respectfully, like statistically speaking, it has not. It has played some defenses as tough. I will give you that. Georgia, Oklahoma, but also Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, not Illinois.
Tough on paper.
But like for any Alabama sort of folks out there, and we are losing this quick. Like
we have 24 minutes.
I told you.
Left.
Fernando Mendoza's like his numbers do not tell the full story of his season because Indiana's dominance. Indiana's dominance has not.
I'm saying this is just, but like Mendoza's worst enemy at times was Cignetti in terms of like wanting to. Like he could have thrown the ball more just to get him more stats in games that were blowouts. Yeah, they just didn't
because they can run the ball well, and because that's also like with the clock rules and the expanded playoff. Like nobody's going to do that anymore.
And so, but like that was like the thing. Like he could have gotten to 4,000 yards easily and had that. He could have sewn up before 4 weeks earlier.
I mean, it goes back to that Pavia thing where, like I pointed out, like if he had the same number of runs and run plus pass attempts
usage
after November, like he would have had like 2,200 yards in Indiana's last 5 games.
Yeah, no. So we're in agreement on that.
This thing is dying. Sorry, my computer is not great. Mike is also like fade. You look like Lance Armstrong in that.
Is that because the light is the light?
You look like Lance Armstrong in that fake HBO documentary that Andy Samberg did a few years back, where they pretended to like shade out his face. But he's like, "Why do you have me wearing this hat?"
3 minutes at a time. What's that now? Now I'm curious.
It's still 13 minutes, which means it's just going to shut down. We will Osterman meet up at the varsity. You said the Peach Bowl. Rye guy said the Peach Bowl had no aura. That is we are not meeting at the varsity just because of that. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. We're gonna have a ton, obviously, from Los Angeles, Pasadena, maybe San Bernardino, maybe Malibu. We'll just go visit some different communities around here. But for now, this has been Mind Your Banners. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you soon.